Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian. I am here today at the Cody Firearms Museum, a part of the Buffalo Bill Center of the West. We're taking a look at some of the cool guns that they've got in their extensive gun collection. And today we have like the biggest and the last hurrah of David Marshall Williams' gas tappet system. Now, if you recognize his name, you probably recognize it from the M1 Carbine program. We have a series of videos looking at several of the different guns that Winchester with him developed using that system. And this is the biggest one. This is a 50 BMG experimental anti-tank rifle developed by Winchester during World War II. It uses David Marshall's gas tappet system and John Garand's rotating bolt basic action. This may look, in fact, when I first saw this, I saw the action chunk right here, and I thought it looked like one of those, a kind of odd version of one of those like double or quadruple scale training M1 carbines. And lo and behold, it kind of is an M1 carbine style of gun, just scaled way up for 50 BMG. Now, there's an interesting question as to why exactly Winchester did this. This was developed in 1943, 1944, and by that point, there were lots of Browning M2 heavy machine guns anywhere that they were needed. The things were in mass production. There were plenty of them. They weigh more than this, but they're not necessarily a whole lot less portable. Those things could go pretty much anywhere. The U.S. Army didn't have any particular need for a 50 caliber anti-tank rifle because they had actually acquired a number of 55 caliber Boys anti-tank rifles from the Inglis Company in Canada, and that was enough to take care of any U.S. Army need. But apparently this was actually tested by the Canadian military in 1944. So it may be that the Canadian military, despite the Canadian Inglis Company producing Boys anti-tank rifles, they may have been looking for something that both used the standard 50 BMG case, which they had plenty of, and also something that was semi-automatic as opposed to the Boys bolt action system. So reportedly this gun was never tested by the American military, but it was tested by the Canadians, and apparently it passed all the tests in flying colors. This gun has definitely been fired quite a bit. I believe this is the only example that was made, although they made a couple magazines. The magazine has a number 3 floor plate and a number 2 follower in it. But ultimately, before this thing could potentially be adopted, the whole program was canceled because the war ended. So now the other interesting twist here is that Winchester did in fact look at getting into the vehicle business at the same time. Apparently they made a prototype of what they called the Tank Killer, which was like a 4 by 12 foot little, probably 2-man anti-tank combat car, for lack of a better term, something like a British Universal Carrier, specifically to mount this gun in. Now that's also kind of a weird thing because by 1944, as an anti-tank rifle, this would have been pretty much totally obsolete, like all of the other anti-tank rifles in existence were at that point. The PTRS, the PTRD, the Boys, the German GRB 41s and 39s, all these things. Even the 20mm guns, if you can fire the thing from a effectively shoulder-fired rifle, it's almost certainly insufficient to do significant damage to a modern tank by that point. So seems like a bit of an odd project for Winchester to have taken on. But they did, and we have the first-hand example evidence right here. So let's take a closer look at a couple of the bits. I'll show you how it works, and yeah, we'll take a look up close. Okay, so it's a little bit goofy, but the one gun that I really have handy here for a size reference is this 30 carbine chambered Thompson submachine gun. But that should give you a rough idea of just how ridiculously huge this anti-tank rifle really is. And here's another good scale comparison. This is pretty much a standard Winchester model of 1917 rifle rear sight, because presumably they had those things still lying around. Compare that to this, which is the same part that you have on an M1 carbine. This thing is massive in every way. Weight is something at or just north of 25 pounds. So, all right, let's take a quick look at operation. So we have our bolt here. You can see that it is a 2-lug rotating bolt right there, very much like the M1 Garand or the M1 Carbine. this was developed on the basis of David Marshall's tappet gas system. So this looks very much like an M1 Carbine operating rod. It does have a pair of recoil springs in the handguard here underneath. Although this, unfortunately, I can't take off for you to show, but a pair of springs under here along with a gas port in the barrel. According to one source I read, the recoil spring setup in this made it, quote-unquote, almost recoilless, which I find very dubious. Maybe in conjunction with the weight, but I don't know, I'm skeptical of that claim. All right, there's the magazine in place. Our magazine release is this sort of triggery mechanism on the front of the trigger guard. So I pull that in, I can then slide the magazine out. The safety is this gigantic thing. When we pull this out and rotate it up about 45 degrees, it actually rotates this sleeve into position, right there. That prevents the bolt from opening any farther than this, which prevents it from chambering around. Having the safety engaged also blocks the trigger or disconnects the trigger. So that's your safety. Everything on this rifle runs very smoothly. I was quite impressed. The bolt runs very smoothly. The safety works smoothly. The magazine actually isn't that difficult to insert or remove. Now the disassembly procedure, I believe, involves this pin and this pin, but those appear to be stuck in place, and I don't want to be the guy to take a hammer to them here. So we're going to leave that alone. The one thing I can show you is on the back. Up here, we have a button that allows the stock to hinge down on this huge pivot. And then this allows us to remove the safety mechanism, the shroud, the bolt, all of those parts would come out the back. However, I believe what's going on is that the trigger assembly, the trigger frame, is locking these pieces in place. So until I take this out, that won't come out. This looks like it would also be an option to make the thing more convenient, a little bit shorter for transport. But I don't think that's actually the case, because that's as far down as it goes. And once you've got it in this position, this thing really becomes pretty bulky as well. So I suppose maybe if you really needed to cut a couple inches off the overall length of this thing, you could do that. But I don't think that's the initial purpose. I think it's just for disassembly. Thank you for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. This is certainly a gun that has gotten very little recognition. I believe this is the only example of it, and very cool to be able to check it out here at the Cody Firearms Museum. If you're ever in the vicinity or going to be traveling to Wyoming, you should definitely make sure to plan some time into your schedule to visit the collection here. They have a phenomenal gun collection and very well displayed. And of course, if you like this sort of content, please consider checking out my Patreon page. It is funding from the fine folks who contribute there, $1 a month, that allows me to travel to places like Wyoming to bring you guys cool guns like this. Thanks for watching.